huge day in markets, as I was saying, up 2.6% on the NASDAQ, up nearly 2% right now on the S&P. You're seeing the Dow trade up over 1%. And this is why, because there are hopes that we are going to get a trade deal, ladies and gentlemen, with China. And you know what Donald Trump says? Be aware, China, we'll get a deal with them, but be aware, China's not going to take advantage of the U.S. any longer. No siree.
They all want to be involved with America, and we have a lot of action going on. We're making a lot of money, this country. This country is not going to be losing money on trade anymore. We were losing $2 trillion a year on trade. Now we're going to be making money, a lot of money. So that's very good. Every country wants to partake, even countries that have ripped us off for many, many years. China is an example, but it's not just China. European Union, they ripped us off for many, many years, and those days are over. We're going to make a lot of money for our people. We'll be able to lower taxes substantially, and we're going to be proud of ourselves. They're not going to be a laughing stock that got taken advantage of by virtually every country in the world.
Yeah, like every country in the world. So a lot of what Donald Trump has been getting at throughout these trade agreements is this idea that, you know what, you can't put tariffs on us when we don't put any tariffs on you. Like, what's fair is fair, right? And so he came out of the gate with a very aggressive plan, like very, very aggressive plan. So aggressive that a lot of people were like, wait a second, why are there tariffs on Switzerland? Switzerland has zero on us. And they were looking at, they had Peter Navarro in there, and he was looking at trade deficits and perhaps in some ways conflating them with trade with actual tariffs. And you kind of need to kind of look at both sides of the equation, let me just say. But here we are now actually getting to a very good place. And I think it's because of that enthusiasm and determination of this president of the United States, combined with the savviness of his economic team, consider Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, and we're getting something done here. Here's Donald Trump talking about, you know what, China's going to get a fair deal. It's not like we're trying to rob China, but we want fairness all around for every single one of us. Here we go.
Clarify, Mr. President, on China. Are you thinking about lowering their tariffs?
Fair deal with China. It's going to be fair.
Are you talking to them actively now?
Actively. Everything's active. Everybody wants to be a part of what we're doing. They know that they can't get away with it any longer, but they're still going to do fine. And we're going to have a country that you can be proud of, not a laughing stock all over the world for many years. In 1913, they traded to the income tax system. We used to be all tariff, and we had no income tax, so we had the wealthiest country we've ever had proportionately. From about 1870 to 1913, it was all tariffs, and we had more money than anybody. They had committees how to spend the money. They had so much money they didn't know how to spend. Then some brilliant person said, let's go income tax. Let's let the people pay. Now, we're going to be able to substantially lower taxes when this is finished.
And, that's what he wants to do. Don't forget, those Trump tax cuts, they need to be able to continue them. You have a lot of people saying we're going to get rid of them altogether because we can't afford it. And I think part of his methodology here is let's make sure that we get some trade deals in place so that we have a way to replace some of this income, and then we can lower taxes. And hey, then we're off to the races, right? Anyway, I will tell you this, Powell, Chris, thank you for the generosity, much appreciated. I get a kick out of it. We need to turn the chat green, Trish. Oh, you're so funny. Thank you so much. We need to turn it green. We're at 700K, so hey, we got more people coming in every day. Thank you for the generosity, much appreciated. We've got a Federal Reserve chief that, for whatever reason, kind of went out over his skis in Chicago the other day. And I think this is actually what really scared the market, because he said a few things that actually put everything into disarray. He basically communicated that he's in this political standoff with one Donald Trump, and because he doesn't like what's going on tariffs, et cetera, he's not going to move on interest rates. And that was like, whoa. I said, we can't turn this into a showdown, right? You can't be Powell versus Trump. That's not going to work. In other words, he may not like what Donald Trump's doing, but he gets to zip it, keep it to himself, right? Keep it to himself because he's not involved in that policy aspect. He only needs to watch for whether or not, we're seeing some weakness in employment numbers. He needs to watch for signs of inflation, and there are no signs of inflation. Thankfully, right now, we have seen some weakness in the economy in terms of some of the instant data that we're looking at. But he doesn't want to admit any of that. Instead, said something quite different. My friend Steve Moore, who was an economic advisor to President Trump, he spoke with CNN about this, and he said, look, Powell was out of line. I read you the note that Steve had sent me saying that this was unacceptable and that he basically could be fired for cause because it was outrageous to see that from a Fed chief. I'll let Steve explain it.
These other stores. With respect to Jerome Powell, I would say that we were all outraged, that is, those who favor Trump, by the speech that was given by Jerome Powell last week. It was really, I've been following this for 40 years. I thought it was the most outrageous partisan attack against a new president that I've ever seen, and I think it was out of bounds, and it didn't take into account all the positive things that Trump are doing on the economy. Now, that being said, and people like myself were saying, Jerome Powell has to go, but the markets clearly don't want Jerome Powell out. They don't want him out right now.
And Stephen, I just want to be clear. Jerome Powell was reflecting what a lot of just economists are saying. So if what you're looking for is just straight shooting from Jerome Powell, that really did seem to be what it was. Separately, I want to ask you about the Treasury Secretary Bessent saying. Well,
let me push you back. Hold on. Let me make a point about this. Okay, that's a fair point. A lot of the economists and a lot of the businesses were saying, these policies were harmful. But my God, Joe Biden came in and spent $5 trillion, sent inflation up to 25% increase in prices. Jerome Powell never made that kind of speech against in fact, he accommodated Biden's policies. So I think that's something that really angered us. I challenge you to find anything that Jerome Powell ever said criticizing Biden's reckless policies.
I think you heard.
He is totally, she doesn't want to hear that. Suddenly she's defending Jerome Powell. By the way, Trump picked Jerome Powell. He did. And you know what's incredible? There were moments when he could have lowered interest rates. I tend to be sort of the view that you shouldn't mess with interest rates too much. I don't like how the Fed gets overly aggressive with printing. Always too late, by the way. They're always too late in however they approach this, and they always do too much. And so I'm always frustrated, right? I'm like, what are you doing, Jerry? What's going on? Why are you printing now? We needed your help 6 months ago. So Donald Trump's not wrong. In other words, we might need the help right now. So why does Jerry go out there and say, I got no intention of helping because I just don't like these policies and these policies are bad for the markets, blah, 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 blah. He never did that with Biden for sure. And look, those policies were bad for inflation. Come on. You had the triple trifecta effect of Jerome Powell's printing combined with Nancy and Chuck's version of printing, trillions of dollars in stimulus, combined with Joe Biden signing a third stimulus check, for goodness sakes. Yeah, that's where the markets were getting kind of even frothy, dare we say. Things are getting a little bit better. Remember, we have some thoughts for you on how to invest amid all this volatility. My company, 76 Research, I started. Go use code $, so you can get some more information there as we watch this market recover right now. Pretty important stuff. Hopefully, we can help you through some of this. Scott Bessent, meanwhile, taken to the international stage at the IMF and boom, knocking it out of the park. This is the best I have seen Scott, okay? He's Treasury Secretary. He's not a professional TV personality. And he, it sometimes comes across, right? He's not the big sort of whatever that you would get from the TV side of things. But what he says matters. He is an extremely smart person. He understands how to do these deals. And here he sent China a message at the IMF. Think about it. China's economy is just as large as ours nearly. Well, not quite, but they're around 18, 19 trillion, right? We're somewhere around 27. Maybe I have that number. I'm going to double check it while we listen to Scott. But Scott had a very direct and important message for China and the IMF to hear today. I want to play it for you.
Here in the United States, we know we need to get our fiscal house in order. The last administration ran up the largest peacetime deficit in our nation's history. The current administration is committed to fixing this. We are open to critique, but we will not abide the IMF failing to critique the countries that most need it, principally surplus countries. In line with its core mandate, the IMF needs to call out countries like China that have pursued globally distorted policies and opaque currency practices for many decades. I also expect the IMF to call out unsustainable lending practices by certain creditor countries.
Exactly. By certain creditor countries, he does mean China. Okay, so China, has some funny things that it does. I do want to point out my numbers were, I think, a year or two old. 2025 numbers, U.S. is looking to have GDP of roughly around $30 trillion versus China coming in at almost $20 trillion. So that's far larger. That's like 5 times larger than the third largest economy in the world, which belongs to Germany at nearly $5 trillion. So yes, we are by far the largest. It's why we matter. It's why we have this kind of weight and sway, if you would, on the international stage when it comes to these trade deals. But China's like a big boy now, and they need to put on their big boy pants, because guess what? You can't get away with all that emerging market developing nation stuff anymore, China. You've actually become the second largest economy in the world. So you got to play by the rules. Thank you very much. And Bessent making it clear. Watch.
Going forward, the bank must set firm graduation timelines for countries that have long since met the graduation criteria. Treating China, the second largest country in the world, as a developing country is absurd.
Thank you. It is absurd. Totally absurd. In other words, I remember, I did this story. It might have been at Fox a number of years ago, and they had this like ozone hole layer thing going on, and everybody was worked up, because we have to watch out for the ozone layer, and I get it. Whatever. There was this one little area in China that wasn't doing anything to watch out for the ozone layer. And the excuse is, we're a developing nation. Maybe we get to run coal plants and this, that, and the other because we're a developing nation. Well, I think you guys are pretty developed. You're the second largest economy in the world. Congrats to you. But that means it's time to shore things up. And, the currency manipulation, which they are the masters of. Look, I know we print too, everybody prints, whatever, but they are really and truly the masters of for currency manipulation and intellectual property theft, you name it. They have put us at a disadvantage. And I think the time has come when all that needs to change, and it is changing, and that's good news.